Finally got that haircut, and now we're on to part 2 of Game of Thrones History and Lore Season 6. And we're going to start with House Tarly, narrated by Randall Tarly. He proudly describes his house's past and what's been necessary to protect its future. If he takes another shit on Sam, I'm going to be really pissed. Let's check it out.
Most houses take wild beasts for their sigils.
What is their
Calling
sigil?
themselves bears, lions, or stags.
I forgot.
A cloth banner
Wheat,
make
right?
themselves.
No? No.
That isn't
Is
the
it somewhere
way
else?
of House Tarly.
I forget.
Our sigil is the huntsman pulling his bow.
Huh.
And it isn't some idle
Is there someone with
sigil.
wheat? Am I imagining that?
As soon as a son of House Tarly can hold a spoon, he gets a bow.
Huh.
As soon as the boy can sit a horse, his father takes him on a hunt. They return with a stag, a buck, a boar, a brace of pheasant, even if it takes days. Even if it takes a week.
Wow.
Even if it takes the boy's whole life.
How fast did Sam do
Hill
it?
is ours. A fitting home for one of the oldest and most honorable families of the Reach. Legend has it that Harlan the Hunter and Herndon of the Horn, two sons of Garth the Greenhand, raised the castle in the Age of Heroes. They shared a home and a wife for 100 years.
Shared a home and a wife.
Most of the great houses spout such nonsense about their origins. At least my family doesn't claim some long-lost ancient crown like the rest of them. House Tarly breeds soldiers, not kings. When House Gardner ruled the Reach, we served them well and loyally.
House
When
Gardner.
House Gardner died, and Aegon gave the Reach to their stewards, the Tyrells, we served them well
Right.
and loyally. We know our place, even if the Tyrell women don't.
What?
When Aegon's son faced rebellion from the Vulture King of Dawn, my ancestor, Savage Sam Tarly, led the royal forces on a vulture hunt. Heartsbane, our ancestral Valyrian sword and the pride of our house, soon ran red from point to hilt with rebel blood.
Yo.
When Robert Baratheon rebelled against Aerys, I led the Tyrell van and handed him his only defeat in the war at Ashford. But a hunter knows that a moment's slip can cost him the game. Great houses have fallen from a single weak heir. Samwell looked like a son when he was born, but he grew up plump and soft as a daughter. I'd catch him in the kitchen shoving cakes into his ever-growing mouth, or reading in the garden when he was supposed to be training. I brought masters at arms from all over Westeros to make a man of him. He slept in chainmail, bathed in bull's blood, was dressed in his mother's clothes and paraded through the castle to shame him into valor.
What?
He grew fatter, and more craven. I despaired of the future of our house until my wife gave me another boy, Dickon, a real son and worthy heir. Or he would have been, if Sam wasn't squatting in his way. One morning I had Sam brought into the woods outside the castle.
He tried to
I
kill
told
him.
him he'd given me no cause to disown him, but Heartsbane should go to a man strong enough to wield her. And Sam wasn't worthy to touch her hilt. Either he would take the black and renounce all claim to his brother's sword and title, or I would hunt him down like the pig he was. Of course, faced with danger and exertion, he chose the coward's path and waddled north to the wall. Some may call me cruel for what I did, but I don't care. I am responsible for House Tarly, as my father was before me and his father before him.
I hope he goes down.
If
This
the hunter
guy.
returns with empty hands, his family starves. If the warrior carries an empty scabbard, his home burns. House Tarly has stood for thousands of years. It will not fall on my watch. No matter how many tears my family sheds.
The doom took Valyria
What?
in minutes.
Whoa. It just jumped over into the next thing right away. All right, let's pause for a bit. I gotta look it up. Wheat sigil. I remember there being a wheat sigil. I don't remember. Am I making that up? House Selmy. Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. House Selmy. Barristan Selmy. Totally forgot. Okay. And I guess I never knew House Tarly's sigil because Huntsman doesn't sound familiar at all. Don't know what this next section is, but yeah, Randall Tarly just pisses me off. Yeah. Let's see what the next section is about. I heard Doom of Valyria.
Sheds.
The Doom took Valyria in minutes.
This is
but the
Jorah,
rest of Essos wasn't
right?
so lucky. Out of the east swarmed the Dothraki,
Yeah.
and there were no dragons to push them back. The Dothraki tide slammed first into the Sarnori, who called themselves the Tall Men, and whose ancient kingdom dominated the grasslands of Essos. The Tall Men at first scorned the Horse Lords as uncivilized barbarians, which they were. But Khal Mengo had united all of them into one Khalasar with one aim: to trample the world beneath their hooves and take other peoples as their herd. One by one, the cities of the Tall Men were overwhelmed. Still, they wouldn't unite against the Dothraki. Many didn't believe the tales of the rare survivors. No army could move so fast or strike so quickly. They didn't know that the Dothraki live in the saddle and have such command over their horses that they seem to have 4 legs, not 2. Wow. Where most archers fire from foot, the Dothraki fire from horseback. Charging or retreating, it makes no matter.
It doesn't seem like Bran's path anymore. We were hoping
but
kind
the
of.
Dothraki prefer
He was hoping
close
kind of.
combat, howling for blood as they ride down their enemies with their araks, and there were so many of them. When Khal Mengo's
forgetting
son,
that.
Khal Moro,
The
laid
name of
waste to
Araks.
the waterfall city of Sathar, renaming it the Place of Wailing Children, the Tall Men finally realized their peril. Led by a High King, they assembled a great army to break the Khals once and for all, and met the Dothraki on what would ever after be known as the Field of Crows. The 4
Field of
Khals
Crows.
commanded almost 80,000 horsemen between them. The Tall Men had 100,000 foot soldiers, 10,000 armored riders, 10,000 light horsemen, and 6,000 scythed chariots. As battle was joined, the earth-shattering advance of the Tall Men's chariots smashed through the center of the Dothraki horde, the spinning blades on their wheels slicing through the legs of the Dothraki horses. When one Khal went down before them, cut to pieces and trampled, his Khalasar broke and fled. The chariots thundered after the fleeing horsemen, and the High King and his armored riders plunged in after them, followed by their foot soldiers waving their spears and screaming in victory. But it was a trap. The Dothraki were not fleeing, as the Tall Men realized when the Horse Lords suddenly turned their horses and unleashed a storm of arrows. 2 more Khalasars swept down on the Tall Men's flanks, but another attacked them from the rear, cutting off their retreat. Completely encircled, the High King and his mighty hosts were destroyed. The Tall
They've got
Men
some
had
strategy,
stood for
too.
thousands of years. Now the crows feasted on their corpses, as the
Yummy.
Dothraki squabbled over their valuables. The common wisdom is that the Dothraki tide finally broke upon the spears of the Unsullied at Quohor, saving Essos from the Horse Lords. In truth, the days when the Dothraki could threaten the entire world had already passed. The great Khalasar forged by Khal Mengo had splintered into a dozen hordes after the death of the last great Khal, and the riders had resumed their petty feuds. The grasslands of Essos are now called the Dothraki Sea, but no more nations drown in it. Still, the Dothraki priestesses, the Dosh Khalim, prophesied that one day the Dothraki will gather at Vaes Dothrak, their holy capital, and unite once more under the greatest Khal of them all, the stallion who mounts the world.
Daenerys
They lead
Targaryen.
their people to the ends
It's
of the earth
Daenerys
and
Targaryen.
grind all nations to dust beneath them. I knew a Khaleesi who the priestesses said would give birth to this stallion.
Jeez.
No
She's
doubt
the
the Dosh
stallion.
Khaleen had made the same prophecy before and will again. World conquest is an alluring dream, but few who dream it ever wake to its reality. Yet could the Dothraki, united behind one great leader, conquer the world? When I first came to Essos, I laughed at the idea. But now, most armies are either sellswords paid to fight, who often refuse to die, or peasants called up from the fields and hovels. How long would those armies stand against the charge of 100,000 screamers howling for blood?
100,000.
How well would boiled leather jerkins and mailed shirts protect them when the arrows fall like rain?
Oh, that is exciting. Yeah, wow. I don't know that I don't think we learned that much, but it was just interesting to hear the prophecy again, the Doshkalin. Yeah, it was cool. Histories and lore. The great tourney at Harrenhal. Mira retells her father's experience of the tourney at Harrenhal, the slate of events which launched Robert's rebellion. I definitely don't know this story. I only know Howland Reed taking out Arthur Dane from behind. And somebody commented, I don't remember who it could have been. I'm not going to say who it might have been because I don't want to give wrong credit, but somebody mentioned that Ned lied about how Arthur Dane died because he didn't want to sully Howland Reed's honor by killing Arthur Dane from the back, which makes a lot more sense than any other explanation that I heard or thought of. So that's probably it. But we get to find out a little bit more about him, I guess. At the tourney at Harrenhal. Is that the one where Rhaegar gave the crown of whatever? Crown of... I don't remember what it's called. Crown of something to Lyanna? We'll check it out. We'll see. Do I have enough water? I do not. This is not even a sip.
Years ago, in the height of summer, my father told my brother and me a story. He only told it once, and he refused to speak of it ever again. When he was a young man, in the year of the false spring, a great southern lord held the largest tourney Westeros had ever seen, in the largest castle Westeros had ever seen. Knights and lords from across the 7 kingdoms made their way, drawn by the spectacle and the size of the champion's purse. Even the king was rumored to be attending, though none had seen him in years. Ours is a small house, and my father had come only to be part of the magnificence, whose like he'd never see again. One afternoon, he was walking across the field, enjoying the warm spring day, when he was set upon by 3 squires. None were older than 15, yet all were bigger than him. This was their world, as they saw it, and he had no right to be there. They snatched away his spear and knocked him to the ground, cursing him for a frog-eater. Every time he tried to rise, they shoved him down and kicked him when he curled up on the ground.
Bullies.
But then they heard a shout.
"That's my father's man you're kicking!"
howled the she-wolf.
The
Lyanna
she-wolf.
Stark, the young daughter of Lord Rickard Stark, Warden of the North.
Yeah,
and
you
my
saw
father's
that.
liege
Wow,
lord.
you saw the
Lyanna
wolf
laid into
in the
squires
background.
with a tourney sword, scattering them all. My father was bruised
Lyanna.
and bloodied, so she took him back to her tent to clean his cuts and bind them up with linen. There, he met her brothers, Wild Brandon, who led them, the quiet Eddard, and Benjen, who was the youngest of the 4. That evening, there was to be a feast in Harrenhal to mark the opening of the tourney. And Lyanna insisted that my father attend, as he was of high birth with as much a right to a place on the bench as any other man. She was not easy to refuse, this wolf maid, so my father borrowed suitable clothes from Benjen and went up to the great castle. Under Harren's great roof, my father ate and drank with his fellow Northmen. A black brother beseeched the knights to join the Night's Watch, to snickers and smiles. Prince Rhaegar sang a song so sad that it brought tears to Lyanna's eyes. But when Benjen teased her for it, she poured wine over his head. Lord Baratheon drank down a night of scalding kisses in a wine cup war. My father remembered a beautiful woman with purple eyes, who danced with Sir Barristan Selmy and several others.
Purple eyes?
As the end of the evening approached,
who is
Brandon
this?
Stark asked her for one more dance on his shy brother's behalf. And so, Eddard Stark shared the last dance of the celebration with Lady Ashara Dane.
Ashara Dane?
The hall went quiet. The Mad King had come after all, and was now entering the hall with his Kingsguard. He hadn't left the Red Keep in years, and none could believe the state of him. His long yellow fingernails, tangled beard, and ropes of unwashed, matted hair made his madness plain to all. Nor was his behavior that of a sane man, for in the blink of an eye he could go from hysterical laughter to weeping to rage. But when he commanded Sir Jaime Lannister to kneel before him and swear the oath of the Kingsguard before half the lords of the realm, a cheer burst from the crowd. for Sir Jaime was much admired for his courage, gallantry, and skill with a sword. Amidst all this merriment, my father spied the 3 squires who'd attacked him, attending their knights. Lyanna saw them too, and pointed them out to her brothers. I could find you a horse and some armor that might fit, Benjen offered. My father thanked him, but gave no answer. Our people sit a boat more often than a horse, and our hands are made for oars, not lances. Much as he wished to have his vengeance, he feared he would only make a fool of himself and shame his people. Eddard had offered my father a place in his tent that night, but before my father slept, he knelt on the lake shore, looking across the water to the Isle of Faces, and said a prayer to the old gods. The next day in the tourney, the 3 knights whose squires had beaten my father unseated their opponents and earned a place among the champions. But late in the afternoon, as the shadows grew long, a mystery knight appeared in the lists.
Mystery
he was short
knight?
and clad in ill-fitting armor, cobbled together from different suits. On his shield was painted a heart tree of the old gods, a white weirwood with a laughing red face. The mystery knight dipped his lance before the king and rode to the end of the lists, where the 5 champions had their pavilions. You can guess the 3 he challenged. Whoever the mystery knight was, the old gods gave strength to his arm. All 3 knights fell before him. None were well loved, so the common folk cheered the Knight of the Laughing Tree, as the new champion was soon called. When his fallen foes sought to ransom their horses and armor, the Knight of the Laughing Tree's voice boomed through his helm and told them, "Teach your squires honor. That shall be ransom enough." Once the defeated knights chastised their squires sharply, their horses and armor were returned. And so, my father's prayer was answered. The king was furious. In his madness, he suspected a traitor in his midst. Perhaps even the newly made Sir Jaime Lannister, whom he had already sent back to the Red Keep. That night, the king asked Lord Robert Baratheon to take to the lists and unmask the mystery knight, declaring him no friend of his. But the next morning, when the heralds blew their trumpets and the king took his seat, the Knight of the Laughing Tree had vanished. All they ever found was his painted shield, hanging abandoned in a tree.
What?
My father's tale ended.
No, I need to know who this
He never
is.
spoke more of Harrenhal, though he must have seen Prince Rhaegar's victory. Some whispered that Prince Rhaegar himself had arranged the entire tourney in secret, as a way to gather the great lords and address his father's apparent madness.
They said he was short,
Perhaps
though. Is
even
Rhaegar short?
remove him from the Iron Throne. But when I asked my father about this, he only shrugged sadly. What Rhaegar intended, none can say. But all know what he did.
All know what he did. Okay, so is that not the same? I thought it might be the same one where Rhaegar gave the crown to Lyanna, but I guess it's not. Otherwise, there would have been some connection. But was she saying that that Rhaegar took down those 3 knights? Did he know? Did he see what was happening? I don't. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, she said Rhaegar. Like, everybody knows what he did. So, I like that. Aerys was also the one. Also, Aerys also made Jaime Kingsguard that time too. Very interesting. Yeah, let's continue. I want to find out more. One more, I think. Brotherhood without banners. There was some mere details of the origin of the Brotherhood without banners, a band of soldiers who became outlaws under the new king. I gotta read aloud pretty quickly.
King Robert still lived, and Lord Eddard Stark had just survived an ambush by Jaime Lannister in King's Landing. We were the king's men, charged by the king's hand to bring the king's justice to the false knight, Gregor Clegane, who was raping and murdering the king's subjects in the Riverlands.
I know. Okay, now we know what we're talking about.
I cared more about the king's cellars, but I joined Lord Beric for the adventure. And maybe a grateful milkmaid or two. Sir Gregor isn't called the Mountain because of his subtlety, yet he took us by surprise at the Mummer's Ford. He'd hidden his men on both banks, and as we crossed, he fell upon us from the front and rear.
Yikes.
I saw a single blow from his sword take a man's arm off and kill the horse beneath him. Many of us, though, were simply ridden down and drowned. The survivors spotted my damn red cloak and rallied around me, and we cut our way free. 100 men we'd been that morning. By dark, only 40 were left, and Lord Beric looked to make us 39 before morning.
Oh.
I drew a foot of lance from his chest and poured boiling wine into the hole it left. But I knew there was no hope. When his light failed, I shut his eyes, placed my hands on his cold chest, and mumbled a half-remembered blessing over his body. Because he was my commander and my friend. And I didn't know what else to do. Then
His
I
eyes
felt his heart
opened.
thud beneath his breast. His body shuddered as the fire of life rekindled inside it. I used to joke that I became a red priest because the robes hid the wine stains, but the wine itself hid an unbelieving heart. When Beric's eyes opened, so did mine. I fell to my knees and praised the one true God and begged forgiveness for my ways. I don't know if the Lord heard me, but when dawn came, Beric was still alive and stronger than he'd been. He told us
Before
that
the
our war
fight,
hadn't
or
ended at the Mummer's Ford, but begun, and that every fallen brother would be avenged. We were so few, though, that all we could do was harry the Lannisters' rear. Luckily, all they could do was kill Beric. A Lannister mace shattered his helm and skull.
Oh,
A
man.
noose snapped his neck after he surrendered himself to save a beekeeper and his wife. The mountain's dirt pierced his eye through his visor. After each time, I stood over his corpse and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord brought him back.
Oh my god. Does
Then
the
we
mountain
heard
not
that
freak
Robert was
out?
dead, and Lord Eddard too. We'd been sent by the king's hand to deal with outlaws, but now we were the outlaws, and Lord Tywin was the hand of the king. Some wanted to yield, but Beric wouldn't hear of it. We were still king's men, he said, and these were the king's people the lions were savaging. If we could not fight for Robert, we would fight for them, until
That's-
every man of us was dead.
That sword
We'd
of
lost the
fire.
king's banner at the Mummer's Ford, but then the countryside was awash with sigils and armies anyway. We became the Brotherhood without banners. Beric led us in battle, and I led us in prayer. And the Lord of Light led us in everything. When the heralds proclaimed the end of the War of the Five Kings, none of us thought of yielding. Our war wasn't over. The generals had gone home, but the soldiers stayed. Either they had no homes to return to, or they'd gotten a taste for other people's. The Brotherhood was the people's only defense. We became the brothers of murdered siblings, husbands of murdered wives, and fathers of murdered children. Led by a murdered man. Once we sought to bring the king's justice to the realm. Now we bring the Lord's, or at least we try.
Wow, that's
The
intense.
North
Stop. Why does it keep going? All right. That was really cool. Yeah, so we get some more background about what happened with Beric Dondarrion between when Ned gave him the order to take down the mountain. Is that what he told him to do? And big difference. We find out what happened between then and us seeing Beric Dondarrion again when he captures Arya. That was a couple seasons ago. I'm surprised we didn't hear this history and lore part like that season. But that was a pretty short one. I'm gonna do the next one next time though. We still have 2 more parts and hopefully be about 20 minutes each. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'm excited to. I can't wait to get into season 7 though. Really excited. All right, thanks for watching. Bye, friends.